Welcome to another Transformation Thursday. We're continuing with our book study of Ruth. And today we're just doing an audio teaching as I am not able to go live on camera today. The question is, as a woman, would you ever consider proposing to a man? This is exactly what Ruth did in Ruth chapter 3. And recently I saw a video of a Jamaican woman proposing to a man, and he said yes. And very often we are told that it is the men who are supposed to be the ones who pursue. But in Ruth chapter 3, all the way back in ancient times, we see a woman in pursuit. So let's discuss and see what we can learn from Ruth chapter 3. If you've been following the series, one of the things I said is that these are cycle breakers. And so we're looking at how Ruth is being positioned for purpose and the lessons that we can learn through the book of Ruth to change our lives in this, the 21st century. And I believe there are a number of things that we can learn about relationships from the book of Ruth. And let's look at Ruth chapter 3. So far I've been looking at things that are not necessarily taught or brought out in the book of Ruth. But today I want to get to the love story because love is at the heart of this book, right? So this would be called like a cross-cultural love story as it is unfolding. We saw in chapter 2 that Ruth was willing to glean and to work to provide for herself and Naomi. She wasn't just sitting at home or hoping for handout. And the day she goes gleaning, it so happened, and that is a phrase used in the book, it so happened that she found herself in the field of the wealthy, godly landowner, influential man Boaz, who happens to be single. Now, he's an older man. We don't know if, like Ruth, if he had lost his wife, but what we know is that he is single and he represents the ideal man. So in our last episode, we look at how he was protecting her and he warned his young men not to harass her. And she worked with him for at least 3 months. And he was extremely kind to her. We saw how kindness is a major theme in the book. But if we reflect on chapter 1, the major concern in chapter 1, if we remember the losses that Naomi, her mother-in-law, had lost her husband, and Ruth had lost her brother-in-law, and she had lost her husband. So there were 3 deaths. And one of the reasons why Naomi tried to dissuade her and Orpah from going to Bethlehem is that the prospects for finding a permanent home and remarrying was highly unlikely. And so looking at all of that, Ruth was willing to embrace the wait. She was willing to even go without marrying so that she could be there to help Naomi. And this is what we call sacrificial love. And so Naomi is still continuing the cultural traditions and patterns. She still wants Ruth to have a home and to marry and to have a husband. Ruth has set that aside for the time being and is just working. She's working in the wait, I would put it. And she was willing to embrace the wait. We don't know as it relates to Boaz why he was single, but it turns out that Boaz is a family member of Ruth's father-in-law. And in that culture, we talk about the kinsman redeemer, a family member who would stand in the gap. So if you and your husband are married and then your husband dies and there is no heir, there are no children that have been produced, then a family member would be eligible to marry you and to produce children in the dead husband's name to carry on the lineage and to preserve the inheritance. And so what we find in this chapter is that Naomi is going to take advantage of this, and she is still set on providing Ruth a home. So the text opens up. One day, Naomi said to Ruth, My daughter, it's time that I found a permanent home for you so that you will be provided for. Boaz is a close relative of ours, and he is very kind by letting you gather grain with his young women. Tonight he will be winnowing barley at the threshing floor. Now do as I tell you, take a bath and put on perfume and dress in your nicest clothes. Then go to the threshing floor, but don't let Boaz see you until he has finished eating and drinking. Be sure to notice where he lies down, and then go and uncover his feet and lie down there. He will tell you what to do. And so Ruth said, I will do everything that you said. Now there's a lot of things happening here. She is going, this is harvest season, and at this time, you know, people can get drunk and anything can happen. And she's going to be there alone with a man. And this is very risky. It would have been risky then, it is risky now. And the expression to throw your garment over me is about a covering, and it is a proposal when you look at the context and the history of it. And so spread the corner of your covering over me, for you are my family redeemer. That's what Ruth said to him. So Boaz drank and went to sleep, and at midnight he was stirred and surprised because he found a woman lying at his feet. And when he inquired, it was Ruth. And the thing is, Boaz did not take this as an offense. He, in fact, commended Ruth and said that you didn't go after young or old men. And he understood what Ruth was trying to do. So even in the midst of this, Ruth had good intentions. What are your intentions? If this is something that you're going to do, what is your intention? I necessarily would not advise it. It is something, to be honest, that I have done in the past and it didn't work out. I'd rather be proposed. So I'm one of those ladies who did that in the past. But one of the things why Boaz was even willing to listen, and is one of the points I want to stress here, is because of the character of Ruth. Ruth is described as a noble woman. So she's not following the traditions of her country or of other women. She's serious about the Lord. And during this season of uncertainty, she wasn't sure she would marry again. She was walking uprightly. Her reputation preceded her. Her character was one that was noble. The same thing is said of Boaz. And too often in the church, you know, in our single season, we are not walking uprightly. We're not maintaining sexual purity. And even among young men and young women, just being alone together, things tend to happen. And so it is so interesting that Ruth and Boaz were able to be alone and nothing happened. And even as you know, Ruth made the first move, she allowed Boaz to follow through, right? So when I was listening to Casey Nicole presenting on it, she said that, I think it was her pastor presented and said, slip me a ruthie. In other words, it is you letting the person know that you have interest, but you are letting the man go ahead and finish it. And she didn't do this alone. She got this based on Naomi's counsel. And Naomi, in a sense here, is finding purpose again because she felt hopeless and bitter and she had no hope. She felt useless. But God is using her wisdom and an experience to help Ruth to find a home, find a new husband, but also behind the scenes, he's using Naomi in this matchmaking thing to activate his plan to bring forth a deliverer for Israel, to bring forth one who would unite the nation of Israel, and that is David. What we want to take away from this chapter is, you know, are you trustworthy? What is your character like? What are people saying about you? The scripture talks to us in the New Testament about the older women encouraging the younger women and teaching the younger women how to take care of their husbands. And this is exactly what we're seeing happening here with Naomi, is offering wise counsel. And we need to bridge that generational gap. And so we see Naomi and Ruth bridging the generational gap. And she was willing to listen to the older woman. And many times young people don't want to listen because they think they know it all. But we are seeing Ruth's humility, how teachable she is. And there comes a time when you have sat in sorrow for so long. Is God saying to you today that it is time to take off the garments of mourning and to love again? For those of you who've been hurt, is it time to take off your mourning garments, to freshen up yourself and to love again? That's something to consider, because this is exactly what is coming out. Naomi says, put on your best clothes, take off your widow's garment, and make a move. Now we have to be careful, but this is unconventional and it works. But Ruth wasn't acting alone. And we see Boaz even going to great lengths to protect her. He said to her, the Lord bless you, my daughter, in verse 10. You are showing even more family loyalty now than you did before, for you've not gone after a younger man, whether rich or poor. Now don't worry about a thing, my daughter. I will do what is necessary, for everyone knows you are a virtuous woman. Wow. Does everyone know that you're a virtuous woman? For the ladies watching. And the same term is used of Boaz, very eligible, older man. We don't know again why he was still single, but his reputation also preceded him. And this is what God is looking for and asking of us Christians, that our character would be virtuous because we are representatives of Christ. The same term that is used of Ruth here, fun fact, is the same term that is used in Proverbs 31, where it talks about the virtuous woman or the noble woman. These are the same terms that are used. And then interestingly, in terms of the kinsman redeemer, this is a type of Christ, because Ruth was not in a position to help herself. And for the lineage to continue, for this rescue to take place, it had to be someone in the family line. And so Jesus had to become one of us. The Goel, the kinsman redeemer, that is the reason for the incarnation. Christ became human. The word took on flesh and dwelt among us so that he could be the ultimate kinsman redeemer to bring us back into right relationship with God. And that's where we see the Christological themes coming out. But there was an obstacle. Boaz said, I am not the first in line. So I'm going to find out if this other relative will redeem you. If he will redeem you, fine. If he will not redeem you, then I will do it. Very well. And in order to do this, you had to have money, you had to have means. Ruth didn't have it. Naomi had a piece of land left by her husband, and so you'd have to buy the land and also acquire Ruth. And so Boaz, being wealthy and influential, could do that. And it's similar to us in Christ. We could not pay the price of sin because it demands the sacrifice that is necessary, requires death, because only by the shedding of blood can there be remission of sins. And it has to be someone who is spotless, someone with the means to do it. And Jesus has the means. And this is where grace comes in, because being a Moabitess, an enemy of Israel, Boaz didn't have to do that. So it also, again, with the Christological themes, Romans 5, I believe, while we were yet enemies, Christ died for us. And so we are seeing this kind of sacrifice being made, even though Moabites should be enemies. But we're seeing God at work in the midst of this. So it is very interesting. And one of the things we can learn about relationships is that the one who really loves you and desires you will do what is necessary. So even though Ruth made the first move, Boaz followed through. So you want to make sure if you're going to slip anyone a ruthie, that they are equally interested in you. And we saw that he liked her. He was going out of his way to protect her. And so Naomi saw this and said, let me take advantage of this. Let's see what can come out of it. And we're coming to the end. And we are seeing how that happens. Naomi had already proven that Boaz was a safe person. And so she advised Ruth to stay in his field. We read that in chapter 2. So the question is, the person you are thinking of, are you safe with that person? Ruth felt safe with Boaz, and it's further proven here. They're alone together at night, and he doesn't violate her purity. He doesn't try to take advantage of her. He didn't want anybody to take advantage of her in his workplace, and he does not try to take advantage of her being alone at this joyous festival this time. In fact, what he does, he says, nobody must know that a woman was here, and he gives her 6 scoops of barley to carry back into town, and she leaves out quite early. And then what Naomi said is important. You know, sometimes we want to rush things. When Ruth reported everything that Boaz said, Naomi said to her, just be patient, my daughter, until we hear what happens. The man won't rest until he has settled things today. So you don't want to be showing interest in somebody and be pursuing, and then they're not interested. Boaz was interested in Ruth, so you want the affection to be returned. You don't want to waste your time in pursuit of relationships that are one-sided. I personally know what it is like to be in sometimes those labelless relationships. You don't know where you're going. I was involved in that at one stage. You don't know whether you're coming or going. You're seeking to put a title and a label on it, and the person is just there. But here we find Ruth from the get-go. She knew what she wanted out of this relationship. Of course, she had an advisor, her matchmaker, her mother-in-law, and it's just an amazing turn of events. So when you're going into relationships, there must be an intention. So from the get-go, Ruth has said, listen, I'm in this for the long haul. I want you to be my husband. I want you to be our family redeemer, to continue the lineage so that our lineage don't die out. Are you in a relationship and you don't know where you're coming or going? What is the intention? Some of you are in relationship, you're engaged for 5 years, 3 years, and you can't set a date. I would say be careful about that. I don't think that's the design for you to be in a relationship and you're not quite sure what your status is. And as Christians, as the people of God, we go into relationships thinking long term, and the intentions must be clear. Too many people are manipulating and doing all kinds of things. And so Ruth and Boaz, it's unconventional in the sense that she's making the first move. But it's not just that she made the first move, but it was reciprocated. And both parties knew what they wanted out of the relationships. And sometimes things can go faster than you think. Because I'm looking at the timeline here, about 3 months in the barley harvest. I think everything happened within the space of a year. I have had friends who married, within a year of meeting each other. And we come away with hope, because that which was written to give us hope and encouragement. Boaz is an older man, and here he is going to marry a young woman. Some of you may be single, you're over 40, you're over 50. Don't give up. In fact, I wrote a book called Embracing Singleness, Secrets to Maximize and Enjoy It While It Lasts. And in it, I share the story of a couple who got married at 100, I think, and 103, and they were in a nursing home. So it's not too late. So this story gives us hope that whether you're young or old, some of you may be grieving. You've lost your husband and you're wondering, will I ever love again? It may not have been a husband, but a failed relationship. Will I ever love again? Ruth tells us that it is possible to love again. It is possible to dream again. In her first marriage, she didn't have any children, but the second marriage is going to produce a child. And that is a picture of hope. She gave up everything. She was willing to wait. She embraced the wait. She walked uprightly. And God is now rewarding her for honoring God. And as my pastor always said, when you honor God, he honors you. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. So Ruth forsook everything, and she trusted and sought refuge in the God of Israel. And here God is honoring her. But don't miss this. She was willing to go it alone. It is Naomi who is instructing her to get involved in this relationship, marry again. But before, She heard that this might not happen for you. It's going to be extremely difficult. And she was willing to embrace the wait. They that wait upon the Lord, shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not go weary. They shall walk and not faint. May God teach us how to wait, and may the generations come together so that, we can work for the good of each other. That's it in terms of Ruth chapter 3. And then next week, we're going to head to Ruth chapter 4 and see what lessons we can learn there. And then after that, I'm going to talk about publishing tips and writing tips from the book of Ruth. Ta for now, until next time.